Yo, Abusia, Yadomo Bibia Kwaba, Shronkoso, Abanama 1 political channel, POG Media, Smashio, Safei, and Asawaba, Obelike, and was subscribing after so to my share, Medino, Amafo from Sensa, to me, Aka, and please kindly click on the notification bell so I'm a brand and the political update to be at the better channel is to be on so onsa to me, I can watch and nothing so I sound swatch your wagon. After young bone Ryan, some name for and some Dona Embrel. Former Chief Justice Mame Gertrude Araba Torkono Abusia after the removal na yade mame no etimi aba abonten aba abekasa. All this while na mame ntimi mba abonten embekasa nanso after the removal mun sensem no mame no finally waba abonten ede nsem aba abetudwa abusia ensem bai na Torkono ede aba abetudwa. Torkono afidisi do pa John Dramani Mahama His Excellency Achaw say Opanachawa say NDC government say Omuntimi enen yeduma onkodia and the or beg for retirement entitlement abusia Torkono kwa osewonko after the yasakwa after the Torkono asa make you ten abase opa John Dramani Mahama Achawa the retirement entitlement the oshena omonfamana abusia and also akwakoye latest news our media ne so a atrenchi abusuami waste time plan momienko ne nkonko tie ensema ekos ne binasa na ebekono onya like dwumadi na make sure be like share ma foforo sonsa into me enka bi medamasi.
These people you can't tell me say it is always their personal interest. Eya munya de munyindi. Nobody is thinking about you. Will be your personal interest first. Me catch it. Nobody is thinking about you. Yes, Torkono approach President Mahama through some people say that omu permanent plan omu dini or omu retire at least no. And yamana eso wanyano on retire with. And just say the entitlement, she should retire with it. Now what the details now family. Oh we no some actually could say or science seeking doing everything possible to stop the government from sacking her. A member of the NDC legal team, Abraham Amaliba, has revealed that the removed Chief Justice Gertrude Torkono approached President John Mahama for a discussion to enable her to retire with all entitlements. According to Mr. Amaliba, that course of action ceased when suddenly Mrs. Torkono appealed her removal process in court. I can tell you on authority that Gertrude Torkono worked through some two eminent persons in this country. They came to plead that she should be allowed to retire with all her entitlements. Nti you say Torkono working with Akuffo. Omuye big men in Ghana. Ana through them no. Just say obi peso or deliver message mawa of the fat penny bi so one. Say nebe onu amba but the fat penny bi so na penny na ye bibia ma no. Ha de say bia obema wonim se ne yesi oba pa ne papa ko si oba man obi papa ko pe obi abre no ha san Akuffo ne bi no ti onu anko kan wa pe Akuffo no mu ko ya ma no to mu ba so me pa che o say this government ne be pa no mpo a the entitlement they should let it follow her. Somehow when the discussion was ongoing, she went to court to fight her removal process. Amaliba recalled and Amaliba said time and removal lay no because Torkono that know him say she will go home. You know that. Not that Torkono ya where say a then you make fee. But no ye be behind the scene to see how active she is. Because the best thing is she could have just resigned and go and sit home. But when yes sir. Oko catch President Mahama through some big people say Omu mane retire grandpa, they should let him retire. They should let her retire with some benefit in Pono. Now, behind the scene, no sign fighting the removal process. The Chief Executive Officer of the National Road Safety Authority disclosed this on TV3 Key Points on Saturday. The topic for discussion was the removal of Gertrude Torkono as Chief Justice. A member of panel, Mr. Ansansare, had suggested that on humanitarian grounds, Mrs. Torkono should have been allowed to retire with her entitlement. She has worked for 21 years. It would have been good for the president to have given her the opportunity to retire, he said. However, Mr. Amaliba noted that Mrs. Torkono truncated that initiative she commenced by her subsequent actions. See, your friend is saying, Mr. Ansa, I know what TV news, cousin or just old. Is it Torkono could feel at least no guy man could feel with an entitlement any other? And Amaliba just say, oh, Torkono, yeah, it is true. I had you for 21 years. But Torkono na Kasano. Ninyama na oyano ene ma sa niama na nyina hwere no. In a related development on 1st September, a legal practitioner Martin Kwebu stated that the removed Chief Justice Gertrude Torkono loses all her entitlement for serving as head of Ghana's judiciary. This, he says, is because the removal implies a liability for breaching certain rules while in office. According to Kwebu, the specific breaches she committed will be disclosed once the report has been released to the president. Entitlement Kwebu 70. Martin Kwebu 70. The reason Intia Torkono so could without an entitlement and so, and they say, number one, yes, we are breaching constitution. No? There is rules and regulations of every work. But this woman, no, Obabeya Chief Justice, no, she was behaving as if Ajumano, she was behaving as if say she's the first ever Chief Justice. Your witness won life more, and I said she's the best ever Chief Justice, and I said she was behaving like Ajumano. She's going to handle it forever. You see, this is because the meaning of the sack is that she was sacked on the basis that she's been found liable to have breached certain rules whilst in office, he stated. Commenting on the development following the sacking of the Chief Justice on TV3, the renowned lawyer stated that the Supreme Court has been clear that the decision can be made public after a decision has been made. He says the perusal of the report will apprise Ghanaians on what constituted Madam Torkono's removal. We know everything. Yes, Torkono did a lot of things. In fact, and Yama Torkono yes say in a dim crampono, and Yanin Yana Mukan wants some more petition. Yeah, there are a lot of things that Torkono yeah young can want some more petition, a lot of things. And I'm still wondering, say, you commit such a crime as a Chief Justice. Now you are praying, say my you with now go catch say, oh, you practice law, and you know is not any other thing than the law. The law is the law. And to say law no obey there's no problem or no sacking beyond the Jerry Kopi said, like the motivational speaker, they always wear different faces, beg behind the scenes, act in public. Sylvester said she forgot to take the issue to FIFA. Kofi Clinton, so she know all this, but take the whole Ghana to ECOWAS court. Addo said her next stop will be Nogopo. Dobu say how far with her case at ECOWAS. Emfa. Camille says she thinks President Mahama is a Kuiko. Afenyo marking his life at her one corner. Now, Supreme Court ethic room her witnessing all this issue and say me koso bibi e koso ni ade no. Supreme Court a wo room ha no. Ahun bibi a koso no. Supreme Court na antimanji. ECOWAS court no omo wa Abuja. They don't even know what is happening in Ghana. Omu na ebetima twitaju. MPP free office less than 6 months to Torkono judiciary in DPO until they akwa Abuja. I say more. These people are funny.
Felix Fosu Kwachi issuing Kwachi Ofosu issuing a statement and saying and telling the whole nation that her leadership, the Chief Justice Gertrude Torkono, had been removed from office. And that followed a submission of the report by the investigative committee set up under Article 146 by the President to investigate 3 separate complaints or petitions that had been submitted to the office of the President for the removal of the Chief Justice. The petitions were submitted to the President. After that, there was the Council of State that determined what is known as the prima facie case. And then after that, the 5-member committee was formed. It was followed by suspension of the Chief Justice. The committee eventually submitted its recommendations, and the President, by law, is bound to act on the recommendations, and the President acted on the recommendations to remove the Chief Justice from office. The committee took some 133 days since April 22, 2025 to deal with the subject matter. The members were Justice Poaman, who was chair, Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Dibu Asiedu, also a Justice of the Supreme Court, he was a member, Daniel Domelevo, former Auditor General, Major Flora Dalugu, who is from the Armed Forces, and Professor James Jisa, Associate Professor at the University of Ghana. And as we know, there were at least some 6 suits that were filed seeking to challenge the process. The petitioners were Daniel Ofori, and there was one petition by a group known as the Shining Stars that was very controversial. There was Ayamga Yakubu, a police officer who also submitted a petition. You had the petition of Daniel Ofori containing as many as 21 allegations of misbehavior and 4 allegations of incompetence against the Chief Justice. So this is where we are now. So now let's get to appreciate when the committee concluded its, work, and as we have become aware, they have stated that the Chief Justice, her conduct in respect of some of the complaints were found to constitute stated misbehavior, and that's why she was removed. So that's why we are asking this afternoon, what is that animal known as stated misbehavior? Joining me is lawyer Cole Abaka Asuman. He's now in private practice. He was in private practice and then went into public service, becoming the youngest to become the legal counsel to the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akuffo. He had a rare privilege of, seeing some of these things as firsthand and dealing with them in that respect. So let's hope that he's able to assist us appreciate what stated misbehavior is. Cole, thank you so very much for making time to join us this afternoon. Please.
Thank you very much, Tabsen.
Great to have you. Great to have you. So yesterday I was on Newsfile interviewing a number of people, including experts, including former ambassador, former attorney general Ayikwe Otu, who was also lead counsel for the former Chief Justice, Justice Gertrude Torkono, and he asked one question: where in the law is stated misbehavior defined? Have you also had to, as it were, ask yourself that question?
Oh, yes. if the stated misbehavior was defined in law, it would have made a lot. I mean, it would have made our work very easy as lawyers. But unfortunately, we don't have it defined exactly. Is stated misbehavior. So, in times past, what we've had to rely on was, what the categorized as stated misbehavior, and this is not exhaustive. The list keeps expanding as these cases keep coming up, and the threshold for what constitutes stated misbehavior, then depending on how you look at it, getting dropped or getting increased. If we had it defined in law, it would have really been beneficial to us. But we, Ghana being a common law jurisdiction, we can rely on what the courts have been saying and what they have said. I must say that no particular case has actually defined what amounts to stated misbehavior. We've been given clues in some of the cases, and I'm sure in the conversation sort of make reference to some of the cases, but there isn't a court case that has actually haven't had the benefit of some of these or what do you call it, these committees that have sat on these matters. We haven't had the benefit of stated misbehavior in those cases, where we're set in how they determined that those who against whom petitions had been leveled, how they fell below that standard to the extent that it warranted their removal or suspension or whatever. Anything specifically stated. So you have to go to legal dictionaries, or you've got to go to the normal dictionaries to understand what first of all behavior is, and then what amounts to misbehavior, and then what do we mean when we say something, or we say that a conduct or an action is stated misbehavior, and how do you found an entire petition to remove an office holder on that basis.
Right. So it said that constitutions contain the broad strokes of, the law, particularly to establish institutions and to give them power to exercise. Is it really fair to be expecting that the Constitution would have defined what stated misbehavior is? The Constitution uses several words, including Latin expressions, but it doesn't define them.
Yes, the question as to whether it would have been fair for stated misbehavior to be defined in the Constitution, I think, given the broad nature and how as human beings and how as practitioners we can define it as we go along, I think it would have been very helpful if the Constitution actually defined what stated misbehavior is, particularly because it is used, in the case of the removal of constitutional office holders, particularly the Chief Justice, who heads the judicial. That is independence. They are sort of like the custodians of the Constitution. They are the ones who should not be influenced. They are the ones who should be seen to be exercising, administering justice on behalf of the people. They're the ones who hold the scale between the people and the state, and that includes the executive, that includes the legislature. And so for the ground upon which they have defined it, it should have been specifically defined, and it could have been expanded in case law. But leaving the definition open like that lends itself to all kinds of interpretations and applications and misapplications and misinterpretations, which can result in a number of things, including the removal of office holders under the Constitution. So, if you ask me, I'd say that in my opinion, the stated misbehavior should have been defined in the Constitution. At least we should have had exactly what the definition is, and then leave the list in terms of the conduct as to what it amounts to maybe case law to determine.
Right. Now, apart from Article 146, Clause 1, we also find that in Article 151, removal of judicial officers, the Constitution employs the same, as it were, measure or the same standard. Article 151, Clause 1 says a person holding a judicial office may be removed from office by the Chief Justice on grounds only of stated misbehavior, incompetence, or inability to perform his functions arising from infirmity of body or mind, and upon a resolution supported by the votes of not less than 2/3 of all the members of the Judicial Council. So, why do you think the framers of the Constitution use stated misbehavior not only once in the Constitution and yet didn't feel the need to define it?
Well, I can't sort of guess as to why they wouldn't have done that. The Constitution is a living document. It continues to evolve. It has evolved since '92, and the manner in which we sort of interpret the Constitution.
All right, Abusia teachers, when in some course, our political highway so after you get to Araba Torkono removal no. Mameno eshisenko for chi so mompa John Romani Mahama achomano na se omoso onkwa obeko nemum ne retirement entitlement de obehwe aban ne se aban no edebema no isan se okufi die sebi sika edaho se okwa akudi paade enya de according to kunu o chese owo bi da wa busua ensem no akoye ensem bia ewo ho Gertrude Araba Torkono anka woti ase resign at first da or retirement entitlement no enye senka de fanko for so emomo pa acho ma hono sisi die menjin ni se John Dramani Mahama His Excellency in this government no abeti ase se da retirement entitlement no de beba Torkono abusua any update bia efa dance nsem we ho ba ye de beba aba bedomo medamase na medemwasi asamoje penie mbi kuti nsema ekoso political highway so aha POG Media medamase.